drag racing fan, Lee Craft, the Monday Morning Racer, back in studio with another episode of Between the Slicks, where we're going to talk about everything drag racing, maybe more in line tonight to saying in front of or behind the slick. In particular, do hope with our guest tonight, Jack from CycleDrag.com, that we are going to be chatting it up concerning motorcycle drag racing in particular. The season kicked off for them at the famed Gator Nationals at Gainesville Raceway there in Gainesville, Florida, for the Pro Stock motorcycle rendition of the two-wheel variety in the drag racing world. But with Jack, we can certainly talk more than that. We might be able to talk with him a little bit about some Nitro Harley, some XDA, and beyond in the motorcycle drag racing world. And plus, he also has a great tune on drag racing as a whole. And he is obviously a fan of the sport. CycleDrag.com is an important part in covering the sport, and looking forward to talking with him. With that said, mind you, he did reach out to me earlier today and mention that he is doing some voiceover work and that he might not be in. So I want to make everybody aware of that here at the top of the show, the beginning of the show, that we might not actually have Jack tonight. I do hope he is able to come in. We definitely want to talk with him. We definitely want to chat with him. We want to get his perspective on the sport as a whole. But yes, in particular, pro stock motorcycle drag racing and the NHRA, because I think pro stock motorcycle is such a great class. Certainly. Are they as loud as nitro cars? No. Do they have big, long burnouts? Well, no. Do they impact to the extent of, I think, even pro stock with OEM and people having ties and emotional connections to a Ford, GM, or Dodge? Well, not so much, I don't think. But the competition and the characters that are there in pro stock motorcycle should be highlighted and should be noted, from a Ryan Ayler to a Matt Smith, an Angie Smith, Steve Johnson, Karen Stouffer, and many others in that class. One of the most successful women in drag racing ever, Angel, in that class. And none of these people on these bikes, now going, it seems like, regularly well over 200 miles per hour in the quarter mile, and this past weekend having a record weekend, well, they should not be overlooked in any way, shape, form, or fashion. They have a great class. I love it when they're at NHRA national events, and wanted to do some highlighting and some focusing on that group tonight because it is absolutely stellar what they're doing on those two-wheeled machines. Let's dive into the comments section really quickly here. Drag Racing Central, thank you for watching as always, man. MMR and Sam Folger, he is already actually asking about, are the Harleys still running NHRA? Well, hopefully we have Jack on. We can get to that. I do know, I've overheard from Jack some news about that, but I want him to say whatever he wants to say, if he can say anything at all concerning what is happening there. What's happening with the Nitro Harley guys is very similar to what's happening to the Pro Mod ranks as well. It is just different, ladies and gentlemen, for the NHRA when you go through all these classes and all these categories. It's the same for the Mountain Motor Pro Stock guys and gals. Just different. Dennis chimes in, says, hello from Long Island, New York City. Good to have you watching along, Dennis. James, what's up, MMR? All I can say about last weekend, what a wild Gator Nationals that was. Yes, we're definitely going to talk about all of the Gator Nationals. I definitely had a stellar Gator Nationals myself, from Thursday night to the end there, the finals on Sunday, working for Doug Foley. So it was cool to be in another final and to be so close to winning, and for Doug to almost get a Gator Nationals win. Mike chimes in, good evening, Lee. How did you enjoy the John Force Entertainment last Thursday night? We'll talk about that. Motorcycles should stay in the NHRA. I think they definitely have a place in the NHRA, but I think they should be even beyond the NHRA and have any place they want to. It would be great to see the motorcycles have many more places to race. I know in the PDRA, the nitrous guys have a home, but there's XDA, and it's great to have all these different series, some that are motorcycle centric and motorcycle alone. Nothing wrong with that for that group to have that with what they do on the strip. Pro stock bikes are interesting because of the two combinations, and hopefully you can get Jack to chime in on the two combinations, maybe, and hopefully we'll have more combinations one day and more OEM support. So that would be great. Antron Brown came from the motorcycle racing. Yes, he did. Antron Brown did come from those ranks, and it'd be cool to see him go back to that in some shape, form, or fashion and duke it out. Now, in the case of Matt Smith, you could argue that he kind of came from car and went into bike, and he has found a home there in amongst the bike racing because he's been in a pro mod, he's been in door cars. That's the thing about the many folks that are on motorcycles is they have plenty of experience elsewhere in drag racing most of the time. It's not just motorcycles alone. Drag Racing Central says it's only a matter of time until Top Fuel Harley goes to another series and pro mod as well. Well, the Top Fuel Harley guys, they do race elsewhere already. It's not just NHRA. They do have their place and spots even before they were ever running in NHRA. So don't think that they don't have anywhere to run. They do have places to run. A lot of times they even put on their own events, and they're associated with clubs and things of that nature. And we might be able to talk, again, Jack, a little bit about that. The motorcycle culture in some of these drag racing groups and type of motorcycles that are out there, it's different. And that's something that maybe we can crack into tonight and have some exposure on that as well. Jeff waving from Bakersfield, California. Good to have you watching, man. Good to have you watching. Sam says, do you think will ever be a heritage bike class? Well, at the NHRA, no. At other events, I think it's possible. Like near me, there is an event this weekend, I believe it is, at Union Dragway here in South Carolina called, oh, wow, it fails me now. I've actually got a video on my YouTube channel from 1 year. Steel in Motion. There we go. Steel in Motion. And it's a big nostalgia type of event, period. And bikes are allowed, and nostalgia bikes are allowed. I don't know. It would be interesting to do some digging and some searching. That would definitely be very niche, which is a popular word in our day and time, but it definitely would be in the motorsports world, within the motorcycle racing world, that you would have a heritage bike group or class. I don't know, maybe one day Southeast Gassers would like to tackle that, and you have some nostalgia motorcycle classes within the Southeast Gasser Association. I don't know if they'd ever want to do that. Again, well, hopefully Jack will be able to be on and we can dive into some of the nuance that is there with, well, drag racing motorcycles, because it is different. Jim chimes in and says, hey, Lee. Hey, Jim. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for what you do in the sport of drag racing, man. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, look, tonight, as is each and every upcoming Between the Slicks it's brought to you by, well, Destroyer1320.com. Destroyer1320. Eric, he makes a great product that if you have a modern day muscle car, in particular a Challenger or Charger, and he is expanding the line, he has a theft deterrent system. Guys are simply popping the car into neutral and they're rolling off with your modern day muscle car. Well, if you look at www.destroyer1320.com, you can find this simple product that uses factory installation points for you to keep your ride safe. After this break, a word on that. We're back. Let's dive into the Gator Nationals.
If you own a beautiful modern muscle car like this 1320 Challenger, I'm sure you don't want it stolen. Because the Challenger and many other modern vehicles have an easily accessible neutral release strap. That was your coin holder in your center console, and beneath that there's this red cord that someone can pop, put it into neutral, and potentially easily steal your car. But at Destroyer1320.com, they have the TDS, Theft Deterrent System, which is a cover over that strap using factory mounting points so that you don't get popped by a thief. So make sure to go to Destroyer1320.com using promo code MMR for 15% off and get your Theft Deterrent System TDS and steal the thieves' hope.
All right, folks. Eric, thank you, Destroyer1320.com, for supporting Between the Slicks. So my Gator Nationals kicked off with, well, the Hall of Fame ceremony and dinner, the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame, Don Garlett's museum and the Hall of Fame that he's got set up. There I am, actually unshaded, with, I believe, who will be a future Hall of Fame member. That's Justin Ashley. Yes, I know it's hard to tell us both apart, but was there, and it's an enjoyable time. It was at the Hilton this year, and you get to rub elbows with so many great people within the drag racing world, like Roy Hill, which we've got some news on him in association with another Pro Stock driver. And Joe Amato was there with Tim Richards and Kim LaHaye. Kim Richards was there. Scotty Cannon was inducted by Bobby Bennett of Competition Plus. There were many great names that were put into the hall along with Rick Stewart, and some of the other names that are not that well known, they fail me in the moment right now. But what is so great about that event is you get this great history lesson of the sport, and not just even here in the United States of America. One of the members that was inducted in the Hall of Fame was from Great Britain, and you're able to get a glimpse, again, International Drag Racing Hall of Fame, of the impact of drag racing all over. So it is a great event to get to, and tickets are like $110, and it's a good time. It's a fun time. You get to rub elbows with these people who are the greats of drag racing, and you have individuals that are in drag racing right now, like Justin Ashley was there, Austin Prock was there, but you have other greats such as Don Garlitz and Shirley Muldowney at this dinner and ceremony as well. You be able to talk to them and strike up a conversation. It is definitely worth adding to your Gainesville Gator Nationals trip. We did have in the comment section earlier someone mention about John Force. Well, yes, John Force was there, and it has been edited, but John Force was, I know many would look at and go, oh, he was just being John, but John had flown all day. He had not ate anything, and he had had a little bit too much wine with all of that going on, possibly. And it was, yes, a spectacle. And in the moment, yes, it was funny, but it might not have been his best moment, and it might not have been the sport's best moment. He possibly took it a little too far, even for John, okay? So I believe the footage is still out there, at least one part. I know some other parts have already been clipped because he kind of stole the show, and the show is to highlight these people going into the hall. I mean, John Force is going to be there eventually, and he's already in some other halls, but nonetheless, let it be a lesson for all of us that be careful of going to public places and not having ourselves tight, as it were. So it was tough. It was, again, in the moment, it was kind of funny, but it's one of those deals, you're leaving, you're walking away, and it's like, ooh, what did I just witness? And as Mike mentioning, embarrassing, I think that is. And I want you to know that it got the next day, well, seemed like from the people that I talked to in the media world that John realized that it was too far as well. So John's a grown man. He took care of it. He handled it. I do know apparently they just said, look, don't say anything on Fox because that's just going to make people go look for it and search for it. Just move on. Just move on. And that's what we're going to do right here is just move on. It was great dinner. It was a good time. It was great to get the history lesson I did of many of these great people that were inducted. For example, Rick Stewart, the starter, I didn't realize he drove Top Fuel. And he won races. And he got out of Top Fuel after a crash. Don Garlitz described it that he popped the parachute and some welds broke and he was drug out of the car and rolling down through the shutdown area at a particular race. And that was it for him in his driving days. And he got into the officiating side of drag racing. So there you go. That's what that dinner does. It really allows you to learn things about the sport that you didn't know and really appreciate oftentimes pioneers. Because what people like Rick Stewart, Don Garlitz, Don Perdome, my dad back in the gasser scene in the 60s and in the early pro stock scene in the 70s, and Gene Cromer and others, what they were doing in that time, literally pioneering the sport that we love, it was wild and it was dangerous. And it is amazing that we even have a sport to enjoy that is drag racing today. It is mind-boggling. Beyond that, the Gator Nationals. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, it was a weekend where I believe just about every weather advisory imaginable came across the screen, especially for Friday. I think there was over 15 inches of rain between Thursday, Friday, and a little bit of rain there on Saturday morning. And it was an experience where there was a tornado watch. There was a flash flood warning. There was flooding warning. There was a freeze warning. There was wind advisory. Matter of fact, of the tornado watch south of Gainesville in Ocala, they did have a E1 tornado land and do a lot of damage in the town of Ocala, Florida. So the weather was gnarly at the Gator Nationals. And it is amazing that there wasn't Gator Nationals to even be had. They scraped the track. They put new rubber on it. They send factory stock down. And records begin to fall right then, and we continued to see that all the way through eliminations. And what a wild Gator Nationals it was, because at the end of the day, you had some fascinating names in the final round, and you had individuals that were vying for their first national event win ever in professional categories. And you also had a dominating performance, such as with Karen Stouffer in the Pro Stock motorcycle ranks. I think we had a great Gator Nationals. I think when you have this type of adversity, it can, in fact, make an event that greater. I'm not saying there weren't challenges. I'm not saying there were not hardships. I certainly feel sorry for the sportsman racers. They're always parked in the grass. And when something like this happens, is it the NHRA's fault? Well, ladies and gentlemen, no, it's not. They don't control the weather. Get that through your head. They don't control the weather. And you have this huge national event. Everybody's going to be parked, and there's a ton of cars there. It happens. Some people had to go home, get back to their jobs, things like that. I understand that's what happened with Alcohol Funny Car, is they decided that they would wrap it up in Charlotte because people needed to get home, and you had individuals that couldn't get cars repaired in time. Some finished on Monday. Some got wrapped up on Sunday. But I think we had a Gator Nationals to remember, with Trip Tatum and Doug Foley in the final round vying for their first national event. You've got Blake Alexander with the possibility to win, and coming back, the emotional roller coaster for head racing. And Hagan, though, winning the first NHRA national event win for Tony Stewart Racing, the dominated performance by Karen Stouffer, the record by Erica, the records in the class of factory stock showdown, Chris Thorne winning in Pro Mod. There's a great story there that I don't think is being highlighted enough. Remember, Chris Thorne 2 years ago goes into one of those Indy events. I believe it was the U.S. Nationals, in fact, and he is leading the points in Pro Mod, and he wipes out on the top end, rolls, flips, slides all the way into the sand pit, and he comes back. It takes a little bit to come back. Wasn't that competitive, and yet in his home race, he gets the Wally and wins in Pro Mod. So, ladies and gentlemen, overall, with what the NHRA had dealt to it, they pulled it off. And I want to mention, I overheard this from an NHRA official. I didn't know they did this, and I think it's really cool of them because it's so easy to bash the NHRA. Do they get stuff wrong? Yes, they do. But they also get stuff right, and I don't think that's highlighted enough. And this is a situation that I'm about to mention that at least there is a little bit of care, at least there is a little bit of concern for the fan, because they didn't tell no one not to come. And in a case of saying, oh, don't come because the parking lots are crap and you're going to get stuck, people would just be whining about that if they made a statement such as that. What they do, apparently, in situations like the Gator Nationals, they call the tow companies in the area, they pay them a flat rate to be there at the track, and they pull cars out that are stuck. And a lot of cars were stuck, especially Friday. Friday, I didn't even bother parking. Like, I parked my car a little bit on the grass and tried to stay on asphalt as much as I can. At least keep one drive tire on asphalt to try to pull me out if I needed to get pulled out or it started to sink or started to become mired up in what was a mud pit. But they do have people on hand. They paid them to pull you out. You don't have to tip them. A lot of times they get tips. That's cool. But they actually are paid a flat rate to be there and to pull people out of a muddy, sticky situation. I can remember one scene Friday afternoon, and the one guy in his dually, they're pulling out this other SUV, like a fancy luxury SUV, like a Lexus, and it looked like we were in the part of Florida where they do the mud buggies. Mud was flying high, and it was a white Lexus, something like that, if I remember correctly. Ladies and gentlemen, it was not white by the end of it being pulled out of the mud pit and back on asphalt. Oh, it was terrible. It was tremendous. But the Gator Nationals overall, what a great event, and kudos to the NHRA for pulling it off. It's rough that the All-Star call out for Top Fuel, well, we only get one round in. We don't see it completed. Yes, it's tough that only one round of qualifying for the professional classes concerning Top Fuel, Funny Car, Pro Stock were allowed and ran. But what we've experienced this past weekend is nothing new. It's happened before. And it's also happened where they just didn't have qualifying period and they had to stack them up by points. So for anyone out there bickering and fussing around about how the NHRA handled it, well, they handled it kind of just the way they've always done in situations like this and what they were dealing with. The track got to a point where it just was too cold. That's what happened to Pro Stock Motorcycle after they had to do the cleanup with the oil down. I will say this, though. Again, overheard of some things in this Gator Nationals. I was briefly chatting with, Lyle Barnett, and an NHRA official walks up. He's like, look, I've just talked to all the other Pro Mod drivers. Lyle was kind of one of the last cars in the lineup. He's like, look, conditions are tough out there. You're a professional driver. Know your limitations. Get out of it if you need to get out of it. And I don't know. This weekend was fascinating to see this side of the NHRA that I had not seen. It's always portrayed they don't care. They're not concerned. They only care about the money. I understand. They got to make money. I get it. You got to get something out of that event. But there was care and concern showed towards fan and driver. That's all I'm saying. And that's what I experienced. And that's what I recognized at the NHRA Gator Nationals. Mike Ashley, the Mike Ashley. You talking to me yet, Lee? LOL. He's talking about I was on the line. I had my muffs already on, and because I just don't want to fiddle with them. All right, I don't want to fiddle with them and like, oh, let me put my camera down, get ready to go, and put my plugs in, put my muffs in, and I'm waiting at the tower for Doug Foley to pull up, and we had Justin Ashley in the other lane. And Mike's like, yeah, he don't want to talk to me now. He don't want to talk to me now. I just want to know, Mike, the blue shoes that you had, are those that you went out and bought again, or like did Greg give you back shoes? I got to know that. So what a great event, and definitely Justin Ashley's going to have a great year here in 2022. American Hot Rod Entertainment chimes in and says, yo, guys, make sure you're watching American Hot Rod Entertainment. Ryan Elliott. Now, this is a guy you all need to pay attention to. Very smart man out there in the world of NHRA. He is, in fact, the car chief on Cruz Petragon's Nitro funny car. He knows what he's talking about. He's seen it, good and bad, out there. He says, by far the best job I've ever seen the Safety Safari do. They were the real story of that weekend. Unreal. They literally made a filet from roadkill. And that's the guy who goes and walks the track and shoots it and looks at it and, twists his foot on it and makes predictions that are like dead on of what that car is going to run. So, yes, they did. I remember getting there on Saturday, and the track was completely bald. And they've got to do that because rubber, it's not like a single nice labor. It's porous. Like it can get under. Water can get under, and it can saturate it. And they scraped it, and then they put the rubber back down. They ran a few classes such as factory stock over it and had a track worth racing on, and that was cool to see. Mike says, new shoes, bro. It was a great event, and so will Doug. Yes, sir. He will have a good year as well. It was good for Doug. Look, guys, so I work for Doug, obviously, so I'm not just saying this because he pays me, but he does. But Doug's a good guy. I really like Doug, and like he gave me another opportunity, another step in the drag racing world, and to do, in particular, social media with a particular team. But Doug is like this tremendous under radar guy. I encounter so many people out there in the professional ranks, East and West Coast, that are like, oh yeah, I got my license at Doug's school, because Doug used to have the driving experience and the Foley in school where you could earn your licenses in drag racing, especially like Super Comp. So great example, Pomona, California. I see Trevor Larkin. He's in Alcohol Dragster. I'm like, hey, Trevor, I'd never actually talked to him before. I've seen him on social media. He's aware of me. He's like, and we're chit-chatting. He's like, oh, yeah, you working for Doug? Yeah, I got my license at his school, and he's a West Coast guy. There's so many stories like that. So kudos for Doug, and he's going to get that Wally soon. He's definitely been successful in the IHRA. Looking forward to him being successful in the NHRA. Well, look, we're going to bring Jack on here in just a few moments. He popped into the, as everyone likes to say, the green room, so we'll have him on in just a few moments. A little bit of news before we do move to Jack. This weekend, we've got more drag racing happening, March 17th through the 19th. Extreme Raceway Park out there in Texas, around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The Midwest Drag Racing Series, they fire up with Pro Mod, Alcohol Funny Car, Top Sportsman, Top Dragster, Junior Dragster as well. If you have not been to a Midwest Drag Racing Series race, get to one. I love how they are elevating Alcohol Funny Car to a popular, to a noteworthy position. And the guys in Alcohol Funny Car definitely love racing out there with Keith Haney and the Midwest Drag Racing Series. But if you're out there in Texas, Be sure to catch that this weekend. And we got drag racing in Florida yet again, just about an hour and a half, maybe so, south of Gainesville, there in Bradenton, Florida. The season opener for the NMCA, National Muscle Car Association, Pro Mods, Door Slammers of all type. You can see factory stock showdown type cars down there. Get down there to that muscle car mayhem this weekend at the drag strip there in Bradenton. And last news, John Montecalvo, long time IHRA, ADRL, PDRA drag racer in Pro Stock and the mountain motor variety, or extreme Pro Stock, if you will. Yes, has raced NHRA as well with his own ride. Well, he sold his Camaro, and now there's been a deal worked out where this longtime Chevy guy is going to be stepping into the Roy Hill Mustang with John Cossey power this year. I have not got to the bottom if that car will run in PDRA trim. This car has definitely ran in the exhibition races of the NHRA with the Mountain Motor Pro Stock guys. But John Montecalvo has been a longtime PDRA racer, and I do hope that continues. But it will be the first time I will see a Roy Hill car come to the PDRA and race since I have been covering PDRA. So it's going to be very interesting to see if we have John Montecalvo in that car with Roy Hill at PDRA and NHRA events, and possibly even ADRL this year for the select events they have. So there's some news in the world of drag racing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, look, we're going to take a break, and right after the break, we're going to bring Jack on of CycleDrag.com, the man when it comes to, well, all things two-wheel on the strip.
Power-Built Tools exemplifies innovation in the tool industry. From hand tools, power tools, and even tool storage. Check out PowerBuilt.com for Power-Built Tools. And remember, use promo code MMR15 for 15% off at purchase.
All right, Jack, man, welcome to Between the Slicks. Glad to have you on, man.
You know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. That's my tribute to the late, great Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, who we lost this week. I'm really bummed about that, man. But, hey, not to start on a down note, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Gator Nationals started on a down note, but we got it in, didn't we?
We got it in. It started. Well, look, I'm just glad, we talked about it a little bit earlier on the show. You survived the Hall of Fame dinner. We both did.
I just referenced a WWE character, so you know that I'm a big sports entertainment fan. And here's what I'm going to say. We live in an era where you certainly don't want to go too far. You certainly don't want to offend a sponsor. But for those of you who weren't at the Hall of Fame, it was your typical golf clap, subdued Hall of Fame. And then all of a sudden, here comes John Force off a plane. And John said what he said, but Lee, I think you hear me on this one. It was the most entertaining, laughable part of the night. And I think that's what makes John Force such a megastar, is he always finds a way to make people laugh and entertain people.
It was certainly interesting, and you connecting it to wrestling. We need to have footage of him coming off the plane, and it be like the glass breaking of Stone Cold or something, and him walking into the Hall of Fame dinner for sure. Well, man, look, let's get this out of the way. Your last name, so I get it correctly. How do you pronounce it for everyone out there? Korpela. There we go. Got that out of the way. Jack Korpela. Cycle Drag. How did that start, man? I want to get to the drag racing and this weekend and everything, but you've been doing it out there for a while now, and Cycle Drag is the place to go for everything two-wheel and drag racing. You built that brand, and everybody has to pay attention to it, especially if they want to know anything about two wheels. So why Cycle Drag?
Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. My father was a racer, and I grew up in Pittsburgh. And back in the old days, this is the mid-'80s, there was a big race in Adcote, New Jersey, and it was just can't miss. It was that big, and there was no internet to follow. So we would always call the track and try to get the right date, and we would make the trip over. We'd see people like Elmer Trett and Dave Schultz and John Myers. And I attended my first one when I was just 4 years old. And since then, I've absolutely fallen in love with the sport. And that really continued when I went to the University of Florida and studied broadcast journalism. I came out and I said, I want my own outlet. I want a way to promote what I love. And when I started it in 2006, I went to Kinko's and made about 1,000 copies, and I would take flyers to the race and hand it out. And you would go home and you'd say, oh, 10 people visited my website. This is awesome. Never imagining YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all these things, and who knows what's coming with the metaverse and other areas that we may be going. But that's how it all started, and it's just amazing to me how it continues to grow, and I attribute that to all the great racers and great people like yourself that come and check it out and get behind me. So I really appreciate it.
University of Florida, so Gainesville's like returning to the alma mater.
It was a home away from a home. And I will tell you this, having spent 4 years in Gainesville, I don't think I've ever felt 29 degrees in Gainesville. I do remember one year there was a freeze warning, and my roommate, he had a bunch of palm trees that he had just planted. So he had to break out the blankets and try to save them. I don't think they made it. But, anyhow, I can't believe how cold it got this weekend. And we're lucky it didn't snow. Wouldn't that have been a story? If that 29 hit on Friday, we might have had 2 feet of snow in Gainesville.
We might have had 2 feet of snow in Gainesville if it had hit just right. And wow, that would definitely be a historical moment. When was the last time Gainesville, Florida had snow? Probably 100 years ago or something, I imagine. But what a wild weather weekend it was. And that produced for the naturally aspirated pro stock motorcycles, well, at least when it got to eliminations, a record-setting day. But let's talk about qualifying because, well, other than like 1 to 2 passes, it didn't happen. So what did you get from all the guys and gals in the sport? Because there seemed to be like, okay, we just want to be safe side. And then there was the other side of like, we're professionals. We know what we're doing. Let us go out there. So what were some of the top comments, some of the top feelings you got from the pits?
I'm torn on how I feel about it. I did try to dive in and capture the truth, as we always do. It's a quest for the truth, what really happened there. And if you look on CycleDrag.com Facebook later, I posted a video with Joey Gladstone because he was very outspoken that he wanted to run. And for those of you who don't know, here's what happened. 4 motorcycles went down the racetrack. NHRA stepped in. They said, hey, who doesn't feel safe? It's very cold out there. We just saw a couple people spin. Do you guys want to just scrap this session and we'll qualify based on point standings last year? Some people were saying it was a unanimous decision. I found out it was not a unanimous decision because Joey Gladstone's contention was, hey guys, we're pros. You always have the option to not make the run if you don't feel safe. You always have the option to roll off the throttle if you don't feel safe. Let us make our run. Later on, I went back into the pit area and the pro stock motorcycle racers were having a meeting. And I heard Matt Smith and Eddie Krawick and Angel. They were all erring on the side of safety. And they were saying, look, we know what's going to happen. If you let one person run, we're all going to run. And that could put the class in a bad spot. So I'm not the guy that twists the throttle in that class. I'm not the guy that does it without a roll cage, without a seatbelt. So it's hard to ever call into question a safety decision. I think the biggest problem the class has now is getting on the same page to where Top Fuel car, from what I understand, they have a rule. If the track temperature is under 70 degrees, nobody makes a pass. So pro stock motorcycle needs something like that where it's not so subjective and it's not left up to interpretation.
All right. Well, do you know, in fact, was everyone that was in the field, because there was only 16 bikes there, if I remember correctly, did everyone have points from sometime last year? Or was there, in fact, someone that showed up that didn't have points last year? And how did they possibly get in the field if they didn't?
I believe everybody had points. You are going down an interesting path, though, because I thought, what would happen if you had more than 16 motorcycles? They would have had to have had done something. And listen, I'm always all for safety, and I'll never question it. The one thing that raised an eyebrow with me is if Michael Phillips doesn't oil that racetrack, there's no way that session stops. They just roll right through it. And I'll also say this, being a devout follower of the drag bike world, I've seen these motorcycles go in much colder weather, Valdosta late at night, Rockingham late at night. So it wasn't anything super out of the ordinary. But yeah, I mean, controversial decision. I see both sides of it. But Joey Gladstone was adamant when I talked to him. He said, we're pros. We assume the risk. They should have let me run.
And like you mentioned, I think also of the culture that is drag racing motorcycles overall, they're like, we're going to send it no matter what. We're okay. Like, we're already on a bike. Like, this is pretty nutty anyway. I mean, it's the same group of people to some extent that go out there and run the Isle of Man, and I'm just like, y'all are nuts. Y'all are insane. So
well, the cliche in our world proves quite true, and that's throttle works both ways. So they teach us in schools, mentors teach us, if you get in trouble, you got to chop that throttle right away. You don't want to try to make something out of a bad pass and get into a dangerous situation. Now, that being said, could something still happen if a bike is excessively spinning down track, or maybe NHRA, one of my theories was maybe NHRA couldn't effectively clean all that oil off the racetrack with the temperature being so low. So I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but I can tell you this, some of these grudge races, I was at a $90,000 Kings of Grudge race at Orlando, and they didn't run the final till about 3 a.m. And I don't think that's a good idea, but I will say this. I went to the rental car and took a tile and had to mop up all the moisture off the hood. And that's what a lot of these motorcycle racers are used to running in. That's the world that Joey Gladstone comes from. He used to be a no-bar pro street racer. So for him, there was nothing to be afraid of. But it's like Eddie Krawick said in the meeting, Josh Peterson, the NHRA, they want to make a decision where they can put their head down on the pillow at night and know that nobody got hurt. I would love to have seen them get a session of qualifying on Sunday, but from what I understand, that's just something NHRA, they don't want to set that precedent for any class. They know that they've got a tough job getting that show in with the allotted TV window.
Definitely, for sure. Look, Drag Racing Central's got a parts pieces question here. Who makes the tire for the bikes? Is it Goodyear? So is Goodyear the only manufacturer out there?
You also have Mickey Thompson, and you also have Hoosier. I've seen a couple Hoosiers on the back of some of these motorcycles, but the most common tires would be the Goodyear and the Mickey.
All right. Speaking of Sunday, wow, what a dominating performance by Karen Stouffer. And what an interesting, I'll say, lack of performance, Matt Smith, with the situation that he had happen to him in round one. But Karen Stouffer lowering the boom on a couple of runs. I saw the 666 from the tower. I imagine you got to see the first one. What do you think about the record day at Gainesville?
I'm totally blown away. I didn't see that one coming. I mean, I knew atmospheric conditions were just awesome. From what I understand, Gainesville is usually a few thousand feet above sea level, and we were under sea level there for a good chunk of time. Now, they also have the new 4-valve Suzuki that's making about 7 more horsepower than the previous 2-valve combination. But that being said, I didn't think we would see mid-60s, and nobody else was in the 60s. So I think that really goes to show that Tim Kalungian nailed the tune-up. They found something on that motorcycle. Karen did her job. And I also kind of raised an eyebrow wondering, well, why didn't Jerry go in the 60s? Because Jerry's an amazing rider too. But Jerry's got the Hayabusa body. Karen's got the Suzuki TL. There must have just been something different about Karen's bike or the aero package, something that pushed that motorcycle into the 60s where Jerry couldn't get there. But that's an amazing record. Talking to everybody out there in the class, they think that one may be untouchable for a long, long time. They think that we will only see somewhat comparable conditions in maybe Sonoma. Other than that, they said we won't see conditions like that. And keep in mind, Andrew Hines' 672, that stood since 2019. And that was on the V-twin, the now defunct Harley-Davidson combo. So it's just really, really impressive what Karen was able to do. And I'm totally happy for her. She almost called it quits and hung it up last year. I talked to her after Pomona, and she thought that it was the end of her career. So she's back for another year. This looks to be her final year, and what a way to begin.
Definitely a good way to begin a statement race, whether it was conditions that we probably won't see again for another 10, 20 years. And she might hold that record for a very, very long time. Overall, first race, stepping away from it, Matt Smith still got to roll out his bike that he said he doesn't have some parts and pieces for, and everyone else that is involved beyond Karen Stouffer. We've got Angel out there, Angie Smith, the Joey Gladstone, as we've already been mentioned. Who do you think is going to be the top performer, nab this championship? And who do you think is going to be a performer that we'll be talking about at the end of the year that we might not be talking about right now?
Boy, you're turning the table. So you're doing what I normally do to my viewers and putting me on the spot and making me pick a winner. I'm gonna tell you this. This season is such a new era with the Harleys now on the sideline, with the 4-valve Suzuki coming in, and for the first time in a long time, you have multiple options. Vance and Hines has their cylinder head. They've dominated the engine game. Well, then you also have the Mitch Brown monster cylinder head that Steve Johnson's using, where we watched Steve bring his motor program in-house and almost win a championship last year. So to answer your question, it is wide open, but I am not going to be vanilla like the people on my site and not take a stand. I will give you an answer. I think until he's dethroned, you can't count out Matt Smith, despite what happened first round. You know, Matt is probably one of the ones in retrospect that wished he really would have had a qualifying lap, and he probably wouldn't have spun and been upset in round one. But let's keep in mind, Matt Smith also has that 1-2 punch. He's got the Denso Red Rocket upstairs in his trailer, so he can bring that V-twin out anytime he wants. And Matt knew that the Suzuki was going to be the faster bike in Gainesville. He was right. That's why he got on Gianna Salinas' bike. But in retrospect, he may have wished that he rolled out his V-twin Buell, because look at what his wife was able to do. Angie Smith going all the way to the final on her machine. So I think there's the potential for a lot of people to step up. I think Karen, obviously, going to be very tough this year. Jerry's going to be tough. Ryan Ayler, Joey Gladstone made a big statement. Again, opportunity for him with a Vance and Hines machine. Speaking of Vance and Hines, how do you count out Eddie Krawick? He looked great. He's been off of Suzuki for 20 years. And I asked him, I said, was there any learning curve coming back? And Eddie's no shortage of confidence. He said, didn't hit the rev limiter once. So he certainly didn't. So I think he's going to be tough, but really still, based on what I saw last year, and he's such a tough competitor, I'm going to say until somebody knocks Matt Smith down a peg, he's still the guy to beat in the class. And he's going for a 6th title this year, which would tie Andrew Hines for all-time most. So that's a big deal.
Yes, I was saying on American Hot Rod Entertainment's show after Gainesville that it's almost kind of like Matt Smith. You don't want him going out round one. That makes him just go back and work that much harder to come back and win. You want him like at least making semis, and maybe he's not working as quite as hard as he would if he was losing, because it seems like when he gets knocked down, he comes that much stronger back to the playing field in competition. And well, that doesn't bode well for the competition when he does that.
No, it doesn't. And he lives for it. You know, 2nd generation racer. Everybody, I don't know Tricky Ricky that well. I just know the stories, but everybody who knows Tricky Ricky tells me apple doesn't fall far from the tree, that Matt is exactly like his father. And this is his dream. I came up when I was getting out of college. Matt was really just getting his feet wet. He used to run Top Eliminator, which was a lot like Outlaw Pro Street, small little 7-inch slick, lots of nitrous, and he would absolutely fly. And I was there for his very first pro stock motorcycle race, which was the 2003 Gator Nationals. I was crewing for Gino Scali. Matt Smith was across the way on a bike that he just bought off of Paul Gast. And I remember Gino had Paul Gast crew chief Earl DeGlopper in the trailer, and Matt was coming over trying to get advice and, hey, can you guys help me out? I'm really struggling. And I remind Matt of that. It's funny to see just how far he's come 20 years later, that now he is the go-to guy. And what they've done with Mike Salinas choosing Matt Smith Racing shows that Matt's a major player and a major competitor to Vance and Hines, where Vance and Hines used to be the only spot to go get power. Now you got a guy like Mike Salinas going over to Matt Smith saying, you're my guy.
Yes, and if Mike Salinas taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, I want my daughter to be a part of your team, you know it's the real deal. I mean, Mike has got primo stuff from the doggone rig, the hauler itself, all the way to his own ride. And he's got top people at every part and piece and position in any operation that he's got. So that definitely is a feather in Matt Smith hat. So Imran Hossein, he asks, do you think we'll ever see pro stock motorcycle versus pro stock car in the future? I definitely think there might be a safety issue there, but what do you think, Jack?
Again, the Vince McMahon in me thinks it's pretty cool. That would be a good marketing hook for sure. But yes, you always do have to worry on these two-wheeled rockets. If somebody would cross the center line, it's a much different situation, a much more dangerous situation than you would have. I know that the gentleman that you see behind me, who's the poster boy on my trailer, the world's quickest and fastest, Larry Spider-Man McBride, he is often asked to participate in things like that. And I know he doesn't feel safe running anybody on four wheels. He really doesn't. I mean, when you're going this fast, pro stock motorcycles included, he goes 550, 265. You really are putting your life in the hand of the other rider in that other lane. And that's why the licensing procedure and getting people to sign off and feel comfortable with that other competitor is so important.
You know, speaking of safety, there has been several incidences recently in pro stock motorcycle NHRA competition where there was a gap for a while. There wasn't really anything. So has there been a revival of safety talk amongst the pro stock motorcycle camp, and anything else that they might add in addition? Because if you look from the pro stock motorcycle world and then you go over the world of like Superbike or MotoGP, there are differences. And I've always wondered, like, well, why don't they run this or that from what seems so similar other than, you know, banking left and right?
Most definitely. And I surmise a situation like this, and this is no fault of the NHRA. NHRA is primarily a four-wheeled organization, so I don't think they necessarily understand the needs or nuances of the two-wheeled riders as much. Case in point, in qualifying, I think what happened, those first four bikes out dictated canceling the rest of the session. Well, I can tell you, Michael Phillips blowing up had nothing to do with track conditions because he blew up again on Sunday. And then Dave Barron making a horrible noise off the starting line had nothing to do with track conditions. He simply double clutched. He's still trying to learn his new bike. So he made a bobble there. Now, that being said, I think NHRA is happy to let the pro stock motorcycle riders go be on their own island and police themselves. And for years, I think the class has not been tough enough on safety. Another good example, in the 80s, the Simpson driving shoes were worn by greats like Dave Schultz, John Myers. They looked cool. They're super light. That's what you're worried about in pro stock motorcycle is these guys are eating broccoli and starving themselves because every single ounce counts. But the fact of the matter is this, I can tell you as a motocrosser, as a street bike rider, you wouldn't be caught dead on any type of motorcycle with the glorified wrestling shoes, the socks. It makes no sense whatsoever. And it's been a monkey see effect, monkey see, monkey do in sportsman racing because we see a lot of sportsmen wearing those shoes. But a wise promoter grabbed me 20 years ago, Scooter Kaiser from AMA Pro Star, and he said Simpson driving shoes should be outlawed everywhere for a motorcycle because you need boots. You know, those are great for pro stock car. They're great for sportsman car racing, but that is not what you want on your feet. So that's a big point of discussion right now. They want to switch to more of a MotoGP boot. I heard some of the riders worried, can I still feel the brake? Can I still feel the peg? They're worried it's going to take them out of their ritual, but that's one way that you really shore up safety. They're also doing something with the leathers that I like. They're going to put serial numbers and dates on the leathers. Every 5 years, you're going to have to go get a new set. And some of the racers moaned and groaned. I hate to call out Steve Johnson because he's the man and he's all about safety, but his leathers are the oldest. They're like 8 years. And Angie said, look, we're talking to these leather manufacturers. If you wear them around, if you sweat in them, the stitching deteriorates. Things happen. You're going to need a new set of leathers every 5 years. So I like what they're doing. NHRA has always done this with the helmets. Your helmet goes out of date. Your leathers should go out of date as well.
Yeah, I was shocked. The first time I got to interview a pro stock motorcycle rider, one of the things I asked, I said, well, I've never heard how long leathers last. And they're like, oh, we don't replace them. We have to just make sure we stay fitted in them until we get a new sponsor or something. I was like, what? because I know from, human oils and sweat and so on, it just naturally deteriorates just about anything we wear, especially something that used to be a part of an animal and leather. So I was shocked that they could indefinitely keep them. So I think that is a great addition to their safety ranks for sure. Well, folks have already asked before we had you on the show about Nitro Harley. Now, I overheard you talking about that once with Joe Costello, so I've got to ask, what can you share with us about what is happening in the Nitro Harley ranks? And it seems kind of similar with Pro Mod. Like Pro Mod, they got to go find sponsorship. It's not the NHRA's job to make sure they have everything they're supposed to have. And it sounds like that's kind of happening with the Harley guys.
Yes, it's a tough situation, and there's a few racers that are really outspoken against the NHRA, and I get both sides. And let me say, look, I don't have a Top Fuel Harley in the back of that trailer. I totally respect what it costs these gentlemen to travel the country, what it costs to run a nitro bike. On a Top Fuel Harley, if everything goes well, you're looking at $1,000 a pass by the time you add up all your expenses. So what happened here was Mickey Thompson pulled out as a sponsor. They used to have a decently hefty purse. They lost their purse. They weren't able to find another one. Now the conflict is a few NHRA racers, a few Top Fuel Harley racers went to the NHRA and they said, okay, we'll come for a cut down purse or a lower purse, but you got to be able to waive our entry fee. And again, NHRA, they've got a lot of masters to appease. They are worried about setting a precedent, and that's something that they weren't willing to do right away. So because of the pandemic, because of loss of sponsorship, because of dwindling numbers, they didn't have enough Top Fuel Harleys to come out there and field a program in Gainesville, and that's the reason the class got canceled. Now, I did talk to Ned from NHRA, and he said the door's not closed for those guys. He hopes to bring them back. So this is motorsports. Cubic dollars cures all. Hopefully a sponsor steps up, whether the NHRA goes and gets one, whether these Top Fuel Harley guys go get one. And hopefully we can work this out, because I've kind of tried to be the peacemaker on both sides, that there's anger on both sides, right? That the Top Fuel Harley racers, they're used to being John Force other places that they go. We got an NHRA event coming up in Gainesville that Cycle Drag will cover, and there's like 20 Harleys entered, and they will be the big show, which is awesome. And they should be treated as such. But I also tell them, let us not forget, the NHRA is the one place where you're going to get in National Dragster. You're going to run in front of 40,000 fans. You're going to get on NHRA All Access. So it's great for them. The compromise is probably, they were running 10 races. They probably need to cut down to about 4 or 5 until that class gets healthy, because there's only a couple teams that can run the whole circuit. When the class first started in the NHRA, we had Dougie Vancel out there. Terry Vance was involved. And since then, we've lost some guys, unfortunately, and guys haven't been able to travel that whole circuit. You got the Jay Turner team. They're still doing a great job and are pretty much the leaders when it comes to numbers and performance right now. So hopefully they can work this thing out, but that is the nice way, the PG way of describing the dilemma that exists right now in the NHRA Nitro Harley world. And again, to drive my point home, yeah, have there been some emails and have there been some fans saying, where are the Nitro Harleys? Of course, especially on Cycle Drag. But I guarantee you, NHRA, this is cruel to say, but I don't think NHRA relies on Top Fuel Harleys to sell any tickets. They're doing just fine, as evidenced by Gainesville, as evidenced by Arizona. So it's a difficult situation. And I've told these guys, if there's any way I can help, I will. But we really need a sponsor is what we need. So what I'm trying to say, Lee, is do you got $10,000 for the next race we could put up from your great show here?
No. I wish I did, though. I would love to do that. That would be great to do that one day, be the title sponsor for Nitro Harley. They're definitely a fascinating bunch. Anybody that has to wear a flat jacket and get on something and ride, wow. Wow. Just wow. Well, you mentioned another sanctioning body. Last question for you here, Jack. There is motorcycle drag racing that happens well beyond the NHRA. Like we've had Destiny Spurlock from the XDA right here on Between the Slicks. So give us, those fans out here that love their NHRA and their PDRA, where should they go to see great motorcycle drag racing around the country that's not NHRA.
Well, not to go into business for myself here, but I guess I will shamelessly. On Cycle Drag YouTube, we go to all the races. And the best compliment I was given was by Kermit Lottie out of Tombo's Camp in Oklahoma. He said, Jack, what I like about Cycle Drag YouTube is I can travel around the country while sitting on my couch. And that's what I try to do. This is day number 18 on the road for me. I'm sitting in a parking lot here coming to you. But I did hear you talk about the Midwest Drag Racing Series. Pay close attention to them because they've got something new this year. They're going to have Top Fuel metric bike for the first time this year. And Lee, I don't know if you've ever seen them. I don't know if you've seen the Spider-Man. Please check him out on my channel. It's something to see, man. Those Harleys are awesome, but Spider-Man's got the world record, 550, 265, Top Fuel 4-cylinder. It's awesome. In the Northeast, we got XDA, we got NHRA in the Midwest, we got Man Cup, we got SDBA. I'll even be out to the West Coast. West Coast doesn't have the numbers anymore, unfortunately, but they still have a loyal group of people with the Western Pro Extreme organization, and we will be attending a race there in Sacramento coming up that you'll be able to see on the Cycle Drag YouTube channel. So anywhere there's racing, I'm going. I even talked to my good friend Chris Matheson over in Australia, and he just sent me a video that I just posted today, and you can check out the tracks in Australia. As soon as this pandemic gets out of here, I'm gonna jump on a plane and go back and visit him, and hopefully you can come with me because it's really neat to experience drag racing elsewhere and just see how different the culture is when you jump on an airplane and fly 3,000 miles away.
Yes, getting overseas has not happened yet. COVID hit, and that put brakes on a lot of that. But as we're slowly getting out of the grips of COVID, I definitely hope to get to some other parts of the world. Like I think it's Bangladesh or Thailand that has this insane, crazy motorcycle drag racing scene. You know,
wow, you nailed it. And you saying it, I tell you, I have got to get to Thailand. I don't know that I want to go alone, but I'll bring somebody with me. I'll bring a tour guide. But you nailed it. What I noticed right when I started my outlet on social, I'm getting all these views from Thailand, and then I see what they do is they just set up drag strips in alleys and parking lots, and to them, they'll take a 50cc dirt bike. Maybe they don't have the funding or the wherewithal to go get a full-size bike, but they'll make these 50cc bikes fly, and they'll just have pop-up drag races anywhere. And I think that's pretty cool, especially if they're going to do it safely and they have on all their equipment. So I'm all for it.
Cool deal. Cool deal. Well, look, one last question. Sorry, lied to you.
No, you can ask me as many as you want.
Drag Racing Central, he's like, why are the NHRA Harleys so slower compared to like what Spider-Man's on? I would imagine it's literally just a difference between cylinders, a number of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing in the NHRA between the V-twins and the 4-cylinders. If you look on Cycle Drag TikTok, I was in the shop of Alan Reinhart 2 weeks ago in Tucson, and he pointed out how different the V-twin is from the inline 4-cylinder. The inline 4-cylinder has a marked advantage, so it's amazing that NHRA has been able to put out a set of rules where we have a pretty even playing ground. Same situation for the Spider-Man. What these Top Fuel Harleys have done is amazing, and Spider-Man will even tell you, those bikes in many ways are more difficult to ride, but they only have 2 cylinders. The Spider-Man has 4 cylinders, makes for a smoother ride. It's a little bit easier to keep all those candles lit, and it ends up making more horsepower as well. That's why the Spider-Man's bike is faster. But either way, if you're dealing with nitro and a motorcycle, getting down the racetrack is a true challenge. But to the question of your viewer there, I've always tried to find a way to get Spider-Man and the Nitro Harleys to run together. If we have somebody smart enough watching this show that can figure it out and get these guys to agree, because they told me they don't want a bracket race. They told me they don't want to do an old school Bud shootout and stagger the start. I don't know what the answer is, but with dwindling numbers, we got 4-cylinder Top Fuel motorcycles and about, I'd say, 4 to 6 Top Fuel Harleys that are dedicated. If we find a way to even the playing field and have those guys out together, boy, that would be a race.
There it is. That's the ticket. That's the ticket. Well, Jack, look, thank you for your insight. And as we let you go, just plug Cycle Drag everywhere that it can be found so folks can follow you and all the great information you've got on the guys on 2 wheels.
I appreciate it, man. 4 outlets for you to check out. No, I'm not too old for TikTok. I tried that. CycleDrag.com, Facebook, Cycle Drag Instagram, and of course, Cycle Drag YouTube. We just put up a bunch of content from Daytona Beach Bike Week. Absolutely crazy. And then the Gators, more coming. Might even have to show a clip from the Big Daddy Don Garlits Hall of Fame with John Force. I might have to beep him out if that's okay.
Jack, thank you, man, for your time. Take care.
Thank you very much, Lee. I appreciate it. You keep up the good work. This is a great show, and I'll see you real soon, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Folks, Jack with CycleDrag.com. He does a great job. He keeps everyone updated there on the world of two wheels, which is a great segment in drag racing, great world in drag racing. Again, I love what Pro Stock Motorcycle does. And I really think if it wasn't last year for Funny Car, we would have been talking about Pro Stock Motorcycle even more. But Funny Car was just so crazy and so chaotic and so great. It seemed like it overshadowed everything. And yes, even the great championship battles and runs that was happening in the Pro Stock Motorcycle ranks. Stan, how you doing, Stan? What happened to the Comp Plus Power Hour? It's back coming this Tuesday, so y'all should see a post of the show set up hopefully by tomorrow or Saturday. I do know from last I heard we've got confirmed Blake Alexander will be one of our guests, and we're working on getting Stevie Fast Jackson on as well. So confirmed Blake Alexander and hopefully Stevie Fast Jackson as well. But that's what it looks like right now. But it'll be back on next Tuesday. Well, ladies and gentlemen, look, thank you for watching Between the Slicks right here with yours truly, Monday Morning Racer. If you enjoyed this, please be back here next Thursday. I will attempt to go live. I don't know what's going to be going on. I'll be in Texas. The party will be happening, the pre-party before everything really gets rolling for qualifications and eliminations of Funny Car Chaos and the Funny Car Classic. So I am looking forward to that. I'll be there and be handling the pit reporting duties for the broadcast on Flow Racing and be producing as well episodes that are behind the chaos, giving a behind-the-scene glimpse of what happens at the chaos events, and also looking forward to bringing a segment called Underneath the Flop Top. We're going to be looking at the different combinations and drivers and characters out there in the Funny Car Chaos world, because that's what's so beautiful about it. You have so many different combinations. It's not just alcohol. So many times people will say, oh, the alcohol cars always win. Well, no, they don't always win. I think a lot of people really saw what happened to Dale and they equate it to that happens every time. No, that's not the case. Nitro burners do win. And there are combinations out there that can win that are not burning nitro at all, but there's nitrous and there's twin turbos. There's even like the rumor of someone bringing a turbo with a centrifugal supercharger as well. It's going to be wild and insane, and that's why it's called chaos. And as Drag Racing Central says, Jet Funny Car. Well, Chris Graves did say that if he wants to enter in the main competition, he can, and I hope that happens too. And you see Jet Funny Car versus Nitro Burner. Dream come true. It happens in the chaos field. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching Between the Slicks. Thank you again, Jack, for coming on from CycleDrag.com. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, God bless and keep the pedal to the metal.